But what I've noticed is my availability to receive men has expanded so deeply. And I was already a pretty orgasmic person. That just took it to a whole other level. Amount of pleasure that I feel my body is available for has expanded. The amount of ease that I experience, where I'm not rehearsing life or fighting life. I can be here now and feel safe in the now moment a lot more. Today's episode is one that has been requested by so many of you. It is the story. I share with you the story of everything that's happened from the moment I left Australia last year and all of my adventures in Bali, Barcelona, and Mexico specifically. My journey of learning from the waters, connecting with high priests and high priestesses, and going on temple visiting, praying journeys in Bali, going back to visit my family, doing some really deep healing with my father before he passed away, and also my journey of diving deep into learning to trust men again and forgive men and receive men, and everything that took me there, from journeys in the desert of Mexico to deep, big realizations. This episode is such a personal one. I share with you such deep personal stories, really, because you've been asking for it. You've been requesting to know more about the things I've done and what I've learned. And I definitely think that there's a lot of insights and questions and pointers that will support you in also becoming more available to receive men, to forgive men, and to heal your inner waters. So let's dive in. I've had so many of you request this episode. So many of you ask about this journey that you saw me go in through last year and this year continuing. And I've had so many questions from so many of you around how did I end up in Bali, and why did I go back to Bali, and what did I do in Bali, and what was the temple journey like in Bali, and what desert did I go to in Mexico, and what did I do there, and how was it to travel with my father, and there were so many questions. So I am going to tell you the story, and hopefully there will be some moments and some insights that will really serve you in the same way that they served me. This has been one of the most transformational, expanding, heartbreaking, deep journeys of my life. And there's a lot to it that may serve you in your life, in your relationships, in your leadership, and in your journey of becoming more free. So we're going to get a little woo-woo here. For those of you that are new to the space and that perhaps don't know me as much, I go deep. So we're going to get a little woo-woo here because the story has a lot of woo-woo in it. So backstory, for the last 7 years, I have been apprenticing in a shamanic container, let's call it like that. And really learning how to connect with the elements and learn about my inherent connection with the elements and how to be on this earth in a more aware way, aware of the things that surround me, aware of the things that happen that perhaps I can't see in this plane but are constantly happening, just more deeply aware. And through that journey, my relationship with water became so deep and so like a love story. Now, when I was a kid, I used to go and have showers anytime that things got difficult at home. Back then, I had no idea why, but I always had this pull to the water. I felt cold to the water. I wanted to have showers all the time. I wanted to have baths all the time. I wanted to be in the pool all the time. I wanted to go to the ocean all the time. It's just water was so soothing. And at the time, I didn't know that's what it was. But then later on, I realized that water was one of the ways in which I regulated my nervous system. So when things were going down at home, which was often, and there was drama and like things that felt quite uncomfortable, I found my safe haven, my safe space near water. So I always had a connection with water. For those of you that care about astrology, I've got like 8 planets in water or something like that. So there's a lot of connection with water that's always been there, but not necessarily in a conscious way or aware way where I knew that this is what was happening. I just knew I liked water. So throughout these years, the last 7 years, my apprenticeship and getting closer and closer to the elements and starting a relationship, a conscious, intentional relationship with them, then I started to develop a really close relationship with water in an aware way. Now, what this means to me is simply that I started to become more aware of all of the things that I was receiving from water, which are obvious, but we don't tend to think about them, right? Like, water hydrates me. I can wash myself thanks to water. I can relax and purify myself thanks to water. I can surf thanks to water. I can have fun and just so much thanks to water. Without water, none of us would exist. Nothing of what exists on earth today would exist without water. So it's something so important and so deeply connected to our existence, and yet something that we tend to not think about because we have busy lives and busy things to do. So through this connection, I started to really make space to sit by the water, with water, and meditate and ask questions to the water and ask for guidance and instruction to the water. So I would sit when I couldn't go to a waterfall or to the ocean. I would literally sit on the floor of my shower and let the water fall over me. And I would sit in mountain pose and meditation and cross-legged. And I would just be and see what inspirations came through, see what messages came through. I just sat with the water. And I did this regularly. Actually, Brad used to ask me, are you going for a shower or are you going for a ceremony? Because I would say, like, I'm going to do a ceremony with the water, or I'm going to meditate in the water. And I had those. I didn't do this all the time. Environmental conscious people, don't come at me. I didn't do this all the time. But I would do this whenever I really felt like I needed to reconnect, and I couldn't do that out there in nature. So in one of those days, I'm just giving you the whole context to this. One of those times, it was around the time that I had the big C thing that everybody talked about and went through for the last couple of years. And after I experienced that, where I experienced a lot of frustration and a lot of just realizing things that weren't working for me in my life. I got really frustrated at anything that made me feel monotony was taking over or limitations were taking over. I just became really aware of the things in my life that weren't working. And around that time, I did one of those water meditations, let's call them. And I received this message in a way that I didn't make any sense to me, but I just had this thought all of a sudden that said, it's time to learn the way of the water priestess. Now, if you know me, you know that the word priestess is one I would not have used at all. I would see that and see that word so misused by so many people in the New Age space, just using it without really knowing or having a grounded meaning for the word. So that's a word I wouldn't have used. So I surprised myself thinking that. And then I went on to think, what the heck does that mean? What does that mean? What is the way of the priestess? What is the way of the water priestess? What are you talking about? But I just let it be. I had the message. I shared it with my shamanic teacher, and it stayed there. A few days later, I started to have this huge calling to go to Bali, to the point where I brought it up to Brad in conversation, and I said, what if we go to Bali? What if we move to Bali? Not just go, But actually, I was ready to sell all of my things, put everything into storage, and just go move to Bali. That's how strong it was. I had lived in Australia for 8 years, and I didn't have any desire of living somewhere else. I definitely was tired of not being able to travel and all of that throughout the time of the big C. But I say big C because I don't know these days what gets banned and what doesn't get banned. So just in case, I'm going to skip that word. But I had such a big calling that I literally felt the pull to leave everything behind and go there. Now, Brad's response was that he felt he needed to go to Mexico. He felt called to Mexico. So at the time, we found ourselves in this situation where it was like, okay, he feels like he needs to go to Mexico on his own, and I feel like I need to go to Bali. So we made the decision to just do that. I mean, individually, we decided our paths were in that direction. And we just trusted. We trusted that we would see each other again whenever it was meant to be and in whatever way it was meant to be. We still stayed together in the container of the relationship, and we didn't necessarily break up, but we just knew that we had to go do those things. So off I went to Bali, sold most of my things, sold my car, sold my furniture, put a few things into storage and left. Not knowing what was happening, why Bali, what to do in Bali, anything. I arrived in Bali thinking I was going to Bali to surf. So I'm so excited, going, yes, I'm going to get so much more into longboarding, and this is what I'm doing in Bali. I'm going to work some hours a day, and then I'm going to longboard, and it's going to be so fun. Literally 2 days before I leave Australia, a poisonous spider bites me in the leg. And I get to huge, like yellow liquid filled things. I don't even know how to call them. Blisters doesn't cut it. Something in my leg. For those of you watching the video, about this big. For those of you not watching the video, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel and you can see it. So I have this. It gets super infected. Mind you, I've lived in Australia for 8 years. Not once have I had anything like this happen. And then literally 2 days before I leave, this happens. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. So I arrived to Bali and it just keeps getting worse. I end up calling the doctor, ask a doctor to come to my villa, check it out. And they're like, you can't go into the ocean. You can't go in the ocean. You can't go in the pool. Literally, they told me a few hours before I had already hired someone to come and do this huge, giant flower mandala in the pool of my villa just for me, because I just wanted to bathe in flowers. So I literally hired this thing, paid all this money to get the whole pool filled with flowers and in this mandala shape so that I can go and have my beautiful swim in flowers. And literally a few hours before that, the doctor comes and he's like, you're not going in water. So there I was. I literally just put my feet inside that pool. It was beautiful though. There I was in Bali, thinking that I was there to surf. I could not surf and I could not get in the ocean or get in the pool. What else do you do in Bali, right? So I started taking care of the bites. I end up going to a few places, just playing music, working, writing, doing my things. Eventually, I end up, once I could already get in the water, I end up in Ubud doing a water healing session. A modality called healing dance, which is a branch of Watsu, where you're floating in the water in a heated pool. And they're moving you around and doing different exercises and movements for deep relaxation. So some people enter spaces like being in the womb again. Some people access trauma they've never accessed before because they're so relaxed that they can access aspects of themselves they hadn't been able to before. Some people just experience absolute bliss. Some people go fully into grief. Anything can happen. And I go there and I just fall absolutely in love with this. Because my relationship with the water is so strong. Just now I'm like, wait, what? Now I can be like moved around like a mermaid in the water. And meanwhile, I'm releasing energy from my body and I'm accessing these amazing creative ideas and these memories that I can liberate. And I was like, yes, sign me up. So I think to myself, maybe this is why I'm in Bali. Maybe I'm in Bali, so I learned this water healing modality and I just keep learning about the water and the healing properties of water. And just for me, just for the sake of it, for my own spiritual work, let's say. So I think this is why. This is why I am in Bali. Now, parallel to that, I meet with a woman that I had been connected with on Instagram. She's the owner of this brand called Warriors of the Divine. And you'll see me wearing the angel wings kimonos all the time and stuff. So she had contacted me previously to me leaving Australia and asked me to become an ambassador for her brand. And all I had to do was just send her some pictures or videos with it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Literally, I wear your stuff all of the time. I already take pictures with your stuff all of the time. So yes, this feels really aligned. I'm generally a no to brand collaborations and things, but that felt really aligned. So I said yes, and we started to connect. So when I arrived to Bali, I connected with her. And she asked me, what are you doing in Bali? She lives in Bali. So I start telling her, oh yes, I did this water meditation and then this thing about learning the way of the priestess. And I don't know what that means. And I don't even use that word. And what is a priestess? And what is that about? And she tells me that she has been studying with a high priest and his wife, high priestess, that do water purification ceremonies, amongst other things, and initiate people in different ways. And she's been studying with them, and they're amazing, and she got meet them and all of the things. At first, I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of a resistance or skepticism. Anytime that someone speaks about someone like, they're so amazing, and so this and so that, I have a little bit of resistance to anything that sounds like someone's making another person the guru. And that's definitely not what she was doing. But because of my experience with that, with idealizing and pedestaling spiritual teachers and things, I had a little bit of a resistance. So long story short, I end up going and meeting these people. Amazing things happen in my first ceremony or session with them. And before I go, the high priest says, you get to follow this list. He channels, apparently in that moment, a list of 9 temples, and not the most common, famous ones that people go to. 9 various, I want to call them random temples that I had to go to, according to him and his guidance, in that particular order. So he said that what was coming through for him and he was being guided to tell me is that I need to go to each of these temples and make offerings to each of these temples. Pray and make an offering to ask to strengthen my energetic centers, also known as chakras, for what was coming. He said there's some really big things coming for you and you get to align and really strengthen yourself energetically to be able to be the space for that. Anyways, I'm in this place doing my eat, pray, love moment, and obviously I don't know why. I don't know what this is going to bring for me. I don't know what this is going to be, but I trust. I trust that all of these things align. Like me getting the big sea and then maybe getting this message from the water about the whole priestess thing and then feeling cold to Bali and then getting bitten by a spider and then not being able to go in the ocean. And that's why I ended up in Ubud doing the healing session. Otherwise, I would have stayed in Uluwatu. But I went to Ubud. For those of you that don't know Bali, Uluwatu, there's ocean, great waves. Ubud, jungle, no waves, no ocean. So I wouldn't have gone to Ubud if it wasn't because I couldn't be in the ocean. So I wouldn't have ended up having that healing session and then connecting with the sister and then hearing about the high priest. So I just trust. Everything's happened. For some reason, I'm meant to be here. So I may as well just do the temple journey, right? And I love the idea of learning the ways to pray like they pray. And anytime I can make space for ceremony, I'm a yes for that. I love being able to connect more deeply with myself and with the spiritual world and with the elements and just really with myself in this way. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this journey. Later on, I found out that he had given similar assignments, different temples. That's at least in order that he channeled specifically for me. But he had given similar assignments to other people, and those people took years to ever complete that. I decided to do that within a week before I left Bali. Ended up doing it when I came back to Bali, but I literally took like a week or 10 days. I was like, we're doing this. I was doing like 2 temples a day or something because I wanted to actually complete it. And I didn't have so much time in Bali. So I spoke to him and he said, it's going to have a bigger impact if you do it all at once, that if you do it and then stop and then do it and then stop. You're also not allowed to enter the temples in Bali while you're bleeding, while you're menstruating. So I had to time it between my period and the time that I was leaving Bali and do it in that time. So anyways, it becomes this amazing journey where I go from temple to temple. And I happened to find this driver who became my Balinese brother and his wife, my Balinese wife, my Balinese sister, not wife. And I start going with them. And they're super, super connected, super spiritually dropped in. They're so about prayer and ceremony and are in deep study of the Balinese ways. So not only I had a driver, I had a brother and a sister that would help me to learn the ways of how you pray and put the offering before entering the temple, and what you do once you first get there, and what you pray for in each round, and some of the words that you use. So I ended up having the most, talk about being guided by a local for an experience, right? I had the most amazing, beautiful experience. Many realizations, many downloads started to come. And then I reached out to a priest that had come to one of my retreats. I held a retreat in Bali and we had a fire ceremony, Balinese traditional fire ceremony, and a Balinese traditional water purification ceremony as part of the retreat. So I reached out to this man to go to this temple that was on my list. And as I'm walking to this water temple, not all of them were water temples, by the way. This was the one that was a water temple. So as I'm walking down the stairs with him, and I start talking about my journey, and I am saying something like, I don't really know exactly what I'm here to do. I'm just trusting that at some point something will reveal itself to me. Something will make itself clear. And I'm just trusting. There's so many things that happened for me to end up here and now. So I'm just saying yes to life and I'm going for it. So I start to walk down and I'm having a conversation with him and I forget how it happened, what he said, what I said for him to say. But I ended up having this thing just drop so clearly that this is a journey of healing my inner waters, specifically around my relationship with men. For me and all of the women that have come before me in my lineage. And I had all of these memories of stories I know about my grandmothers and, one of my grandmothers and all of the abuse that she experienced and her having some spiritual gifts become online for her at a really early age and then being told that she was crazy and that she had to go on medication. And then my other grandmother who was born in right after the war. So she had to line up when she was 3-4 years old, line up at 2, 3, 4 a.m. to get a little bit of bread to be able to feed herself and then share with her family and all that she went through. And so I start to have these memories of everything that my grandmothers went through and then everything that my mothers went through. And I say my mothers because I have my birth mother and then my father remarried when I was 4. And so his wife is like my mom still to this date. So I have 2 moms. So both my mothers, also all of the abuse they went through, all of the neglection they went through, everything that they experienced. And I see so clearly this line of distrust and resentment and punishment towards men in really subtle yet deep ways. Mind you, for the last 2 years or 3 years before this happened, I had been having conversations with my mothers around emasculation and how to move past it. And I've been in the study and reading books and getting coached and how to retrain my ways around men, how to trust men again, even though I've endured physical and emotional and sexual abuse, how to really trust men again, how to be the space for loving partnership, for respect, for so much that I didn't learn, that wasn't modeled to me. So I realized in that moment that this is what this journey was about, that what I was doing was healing my inner waters. And I thought back of a podcast episode that I listened to where this doctor was saying that there's not proof that our neurons store long-term memory in the brain. So they started to go, well, where is the long-term memory stored? We have proof that the short-term memory is stored in the neurons in the brain, but we don't know where the long-term memory is stored. Where is it? And they started to find and strong suggestions that the long-term memory is stored in the water within the body. Now, the ancient ones have known this for centuries, millennia. My studies, my years in this apprenticeship, this shamanic apprenticeship, and then studying indigenous cultures from all over the world, indigenous Australian, indigenous Maori, indigenous like Native American, Amazonian, Native Mexican, let's call it. It wasn't Mexico back then, but let's call it like that. There's a knowing that the water carried memory. There are songs that talk about it. There are prayers for it. It is known that the water carries the memory. So with this understanding, I had known or accepted within myself that my trauma lived in my waters. That it not only lived in my muscles, but because the muscles are surrounded by fascia and there's blood pumping everywhere and there's water in blood and there's water everywhere in my body, the memory of my trauma, the memory of my fear, the memory of my distrust, the memory of my resentment was in my water, was living in my water. So I realized through doing all of these water purification ceremonies, as this water healing, that what I was doing was actually healing my inner waters so that I could have a different story, so that I could live a different way. So fast forward to some weeks, like sitting with this and writing a lot about it and going, okay, how do I see this play out in my life? How does it show up for me? How has this showed up in my relationship with Brad? How do I see this show up in my relationship with my father? With men in general, my friends? What is this teaching me? So I started getting curious. And if you're listening to this and watching this, my invitation is for you to start getting curious as well. How have you, and what you learned, what you saw in your household or in your culture, society, how has that impacted the way you relate to men? Do you feel like you genuinely embody respect and trust towards men? Or do you find yourself distrusting men, not really believing in what they say, not believing in their intentions, buying into the stories that men only want one thing and men just don't care and men don't have emotions and whatever stories that we've all heard? Do you really trust and respect men? Are you really open to men? Do you allow men to support you? Do you allow men to hold you? Or are you running the story that men won't choose you, men won't hold you, men won't respect you, men won't be loyal to you, faithful to you. Let's start getting curious around this, because this is how we start healing our inner waters and all of the stories that they carry. So that first. Fast forward to some moments. I am visiting my family in Barcelona, and I'm there for a few weeks, and I get this knowing, this super strong knowing that it's time for me to go do a ceremony in the wild, in the desert of Mexico. This is something I've wanted to do since I started my journey of spiritual work, shamanic work, however you want to call it. I had been wanting to go to that desert and do a ceremony there in the wild for years. Years. I heard the stories, I sang the songs. I so wanted to experience that. And it had never been aligned as a priority of mine. The timing hadn't been there for me. And all of a sudden I felt like it was time. It was time for me to go to the desert and experience that. So I contact a few people that I know that perhaps know someone that has the blessings to, and the knowledge and capacity to hold that space that can take us to, or take me. In that case, I still didn't know who was going to come with me. And I thought I'll just go by myself if needed. So I contact several people to find someone to take me there, to take me right in the middle, like in the depths of the desert. And so I find someone. And I tell my parents that day, I'm like, I'm so excited. I'm going to Wirikuta. I'm so excited. And this is happening now. I've decided I'm going by myself. It's happening. I'm going. And that day I sit with myself and I ask myself, what's my intention? This is going to be a really big ceremony. It's days of travel. I'm flying to Mexico and then I have to drive like 10 hours. Then I have to sleep somewhere for a night. And then I have to drive like 2 hours inside the desert. And I'm going to have no reception. And it's going to be tough in the body. You know, I'm going to be literally sitting on a sleeping bag on the hard floor of the desert around a fire for a whole day. It's freezing cold during the night. It's super hot during the day. There's scorpions, there's snakes, there's spiders, there's coyotes. There's so many things. If I'm going there, I get to have a good intention. So I sat with this, and of course, what intention would I have chosen other than healing, fully healing my relationship with the masculine in a whole other depth? So I decide this for myself, and I say, and I maybe even write it down, I forget if I did or not. But the intention was to heal my relationship with the masculine once and for all before I birth my son, before I have a child, so that I can truly, truly, truly respect men, receive men, and trust men fully. I have this intention. I don't tell anyone my intention. And the day after, I'm in the room where I'm staying. My father knocks on the door. He comes in and he says, "Hey, Sigrid, you told me about Wirikuta yesterday and the desert, and I wanted to ask you, could I come with you?" At this moment, I'm like, wait, what? My whole childhood, my biggest wound with my father was that I never had one-on-one moment with him. Did not once go for lunch or breakfast, just the two of us, or to the mountain, just the two of us, or he came to see me, my roller skating competitions or my things, my plays, just him. I never experienced that one-on-one time with him, and I craved it so much. So that was the one thing. With all the healing I had done, and my father and I had an amazing relationship already, but the thing that was missing for me was, I wish we had some one-on-one time. And he all of a sudden asked me, after I decided my intention is to heal my relationship with the masculine once and for all, fully. And he comes and asks me, without knowing, if he can come with me. So I'm like, of course, yes, awesome, please. Now, long story short, Barcelona is amazing. I started painting a painting with my father. He used to be an artist when I grew up, and he had exhibitions and did all of these different paintings. So I said I wanted to paint something with him. We start making a painting. I have an amazing time in Barcelona. I go back to Bali. I train in this healing, water healing modality. And then I go to Mexico. And I arrive. And I think I had like a day or a night right before we go into the desert. So I arrive, see my father that night. And then the day after, I start the journey. It was my father, one of my best friends, Carla, and another dear friend from Australia. And the four of us start this journey with the person that's holding the space and the driver. We go on a 10-hour drive, do the whole thing. I'm going to skip some details, otherwise it's going to be, and the episode's going to go forever. But we get to the desert. With everything that we have to go through, everything that happens in between, we get to the desert. The night of, the time of, where the ceremony is going to happen. And my father, the night before, I had called my mother to share some things with her. And it was something small. It wasn't like something like a big deal, but for whatever reason, I had something that I wanted to ask for support with. And I asked my mother, even though my father was arriving that afternoon. So when we're about to enter the space to do the ceremony, my father stops me before entering the circle and says to me, "Hey, Sigrid, I just wanted to share something." He said, I found out that you called your mother. And when I say my mother, I'm talking about his wife in this particular case, having two of them. And he said, "I found out that you called your mother and asked her for support. And it hurt me that you didn't think to ask me, even though I was arriving that same day. You were going to see me that day. Why didn't you ask me for support? I could have done that." And it was so interesting because my masks for most of my life have been the strong one, the one that has it all together, and this, like, I'll do it by myself. I do not ask for support. That was the story. For so long, that was the story. I do not ask for support. I don't need anything. And even less from my parents. Like, my story has been like, I support my family. I help my family. I'm the strong one for my family. I don't need support. Anyways, so obviously this happened out of character. It happened so that I could have this experience. And my father says, he said, I would like to be able to support you. I've never heard this come out of his mouth in this way. And I said to him very honestly, "Well, Dad, I never asked for your support because I've always just assumed that it would be a burden, that you're really busy and you have a lot going on and you're often stressed. So I can do it. So I just do things by myself. I don't need support." And he looked at me in the eyes, held my hands, and said, "But I want to be able to support you." He said, "So could you please take me into consideration next time you need something? And ask me. If I can't support you, I'll say no. But please ask me." So this was a beautiful moment. And I want to bring this back to you if you're listening and this is landing. Where in your life are you allowing everyone to be a loser in your reality because you're not giving them the space to be able to do something for you, to hold you, to offer something to you? Where are you keeping yourself as a winner of your reality with everyone because you've got it all together, you're the strong one, you can do it, you don't need anything, you don't need anyone, when in reality there's so many people that could receive so much from feeling like they can help you too, from feeling like they can support you too. And this is something particularly, like with everyone, but particularly with men, something that I keep realizing and understanding, is that men love to be able to give to us, to serve us, to support us, to help us. I see it all the time with, like, right now I'm staying with my friends, Preston and Alexi, and they have 4 kids, 1-year-old, 2 3-year-olds, and 1 5-year-old. And 3 of them are boys. The 1-year-old, the 3-year-old, and the 5-year-old, they're all the same when it comes to projects. They're looking for a project to do. They're looking for something they can do, something they can break so they can fix it, something they can put something into, something they can, an adventure they can go on so that they love projects. They love being able to do something, make something, create something. And they love to help anytime. Anytime they feel like they're being useful, they thrive. And so this is something that I've learned over the years as well through studying the books and the courses and everything on stopping the emasculation and learning to respect men, is that there's a part in every man that just wants to be our hero. They just want to feel like they can win with us. They want to feel like they can be our heroes. And because of how deeply wounded we women have been, because we've been physically, sexually, emotionally, verbally abused for generations, because there are industries that profit billions of dollars yearly from making us feel as though how we are, as we are, how we look right here and now is not enough, and we have to edit ourselves and change ourselves and, like, continuously try to improve ourselves. We women tend to carry a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of mistrust towards men. But the truth is, when we heal this, we can start to see that part in every man that just wants to be a hero. And we can start to allow them to be our heroes, because that's what we want too. We want the men in our lives to be our heroes. We want our boyfriends, our husbands, our male friends, our brothers to have our backs. We want them to support us. We want them to hold us. That is the truth. When we truly heal, when we truly believe that we can have it, when we truly believe that we can receive it, when we trust that we are worthy of it, we love to be held by the masculine. We want to feel that support from men. We want to feel like we can trust and rest in a man's arms. And this is independently of whether you are sexually attracted to men or women. There's something about feeling that being held in the same way that there's something about feeling nourished by women. So, going back to the story, I'm really inviting you to reflect on this. Where are you not allowing men in your life to win because you've already decided that they are going to fail? That they're going to fail you, they're going to drop you, they're going to betray you, they're going to reject you, they're going to abandon you, all of that stuff. So he says this, and I'm like, oh, never heard my father say anything like that. Okay. We go in the ceremony. And fast forward to some moments in the middle of the night, I find myself healing some of the deepest trauma my body has carried. Both my mothers were molested as children. So was I. I went through several occasions of sexual harassment, and what it took me some years to understand was actually rape as well. So this energy of not trusting, of resenting men was so in my body, and fair enough. So I found myself meeting this opportunity to fully heal this. At the time, I didn't know I was going to heal this, but I'm presented with this. The energy of sexual abuse, the energy of crossing boundaries, the energy of taking advantage, the energy of disrespect starts to show up in my body so strongly. And I, in that moment, feel guided to start doing some trauma release exercises that I know, thanks to being a somatic coach and having the training and background that I have on body-based embodiment work, trauma work. So this is the first time in my life, out of hundreds or thousands, I don't even know to this date, of ceremonies I've done, this is the first time that I combine that, plant ceremonies, with trauma work in this way. So I start to do shaking. I start to shake. I do a specific exercise where I'm laying down and I'm lifting my hips to the point where I'm shaking. I kid you not, I may have spent like 2 or 3 hours straight shaking, to the point where I was like laying down, looking at the fire, just like, please hold me. Like, you have me, because this is a lot. So I was asking the fire, please help me transmute this. Please help me deal with this. Please help me be free from this. And I'm having memories upon memories upon memories of every time I felt disrespected, every time I felt betrayed, every time I felt hurt, every time I felt abandoned, rejected by a man. I start to have all of these memories. And then at one point, I see, like, I have this like visual of both my mothers, one next to the other, and then their little girls, one next to the other. And they're kind of going, and this isn't knowing, I don't hear a voice or anything, but they're kind of going, don't keep going. It's not safe. There's like, from here, there's a threshold and you've reached it. Don't keep going. It's not safe. And in my mind's eye where I'm seeing this, I look at them and I say, I'm ready for this. I can do this for all of us. So I go. And in my vision, it looks like I'm crossing a threshold. I'm just going like somewhere past them four. And my body loses control. Like, at this point, I could not have controlled the shaking if I wanted. So I'm shaking, and my pelvis is shaking and doing this like hook-like movements. So I just keep there. I'm like literally laying on the ground in the middle of the desert, looking at the fire, going, please help me free myself from this. And I just keep shaking and shaking and shaking and shaking. And at one point, well, while I'm shaking, I start to see my coccyx like the base of a tree, where all of the roots and the soil are. Then my spine like the trunk of a tree. And my nervous system, every single one of my nerves. It's not correct to say my nervous system actually, but my nerves, like the branches of the trees. And then every single one of my behaviors, every single time that I've behaved towards men or in relationship to men, from a context of, I don't trust you, from a context of, you're the enemy, from a context of, you deserve to be punished, even though I had no idea that's what I was doing. But all of the years in my past where my actions or reactions to some degree reflected that resentment, that anger, that hurt around men, I started to see all of those as the leaves of the trees. And I could see it in my body. I could feel it in my body. So again, the trauma, the occurrences were like the roots. And then the trunk was my spine. And then all of like my nerves in my body were the ramifications, the branches of this. And then the leaves of the tree were all of my behaviors. So I started to have all memories upon memories of times where I saw my grandmothers disrespect their husbands, times where I saw my mothers talk about men in a way that wasn't really giving me the impression that I needed to trust men. I started to have all of these memories, one after the other. And at one point, here's like memory upon memory, also memories of times where my dark feminine had showed up, where I manipulated men in the past, where I seduced men in the past, not with the purest of intentions, all of that stuff that I hadn't visited for years, because of course I had been in the work for a decade by then, and so it wasn't as prevalent and as obvious. But I started to have all of these memories. And at one point, the shaking got so intense. And all of a sudden, it stopped. And my whole body just dropped on the ground. Like a big exhale. Like I literally was like shaking. And I felt the most grounded I have ever felt. And I had this vision of my whole nervous system, like everything, like literally coccyx, spine, everything that's happening here, brain area, all of my whole system coming online in a way that I didn't know it had never. So I felt as though I received a new nervous system. And I know this sounds weird and like it's probably not what happened in these words and in this way. But what it felt like is made me think of an iPhone. If you buy an iPhone secondhand, you're going to have to empty that person. It's going to have to empty the iPhone completely. And then when you get the iPhone, you're going to have to download everything from your cloud into this new phone, right? So I felt like I had just emptied my system completely. It felt like I had a clean slate. So then I reached my arms up. I made the most open body position I could possibly make. And I started to tell myself affirmations that I wanted to download in my new system about men. And again, I always say, if your nervous system doesn't feel ready or safe to be, do, or have something, it won't. So affirmations alone, no matter how many positive affirmations you tell yourself, they're not going to work unless your body is on board. But this is the first time in my life that I could see so clearly the availability, that I could sense, like my body was like, okay, now we're open. You've emptied what you needed to empty. Now, what do you want to bring in? So then is when positive affirmations actually works, because my body was totally available for them. There was a safety, there was a freeness or a liberation that had happened, a freedom. So from then, I started to tell myself the things I wanted to believe about men. I am safe around men. Men want to take care of me. Men want to provide for me. Men want to respect me. Men respect me. Men honor me. Men are innocent until proven otherwise, versus what I used to think, without knowing that that's what I thought. But really, subconsciously, I thought men are guilty of being this and this and this and this and this and this and that until they prove otherwise, right? And I would say the vast majority of women have this belief. So I started to tell myself, men are worthy of my trust. Men respect me. Men love me for much more than my body. Men, I just started to tell myself all the stories I wanted to believe about men. And at one point, I felt ready to go out of the circle and just go watch the stars. We were under the stars the whole time, but I just exited the circle for a moment, went out and looked at the stars. And I started to cry. Because for the first time in my life, I could see so clearly my choice point. And what I mean by this is, a lot of people speak about or talk about this idea of enlightenment as something that we can attain if we just become more conscious. A lot of people spiritually bypass everything in their lives trying to be more conscious. And a lot of people spiritually bypass with this idea that this is the Maya, an illusion, that we're living in an illusion and all of that. And while there's some truth to that, in my opinion, what really landed for me on a deeper way is that, yes, this is quote unquote an illusion to some degree, but we are bounded by our flesh. We are bounded by our flesh. So this idea that we can go higher and higher while our bodies are still dense, filled with trauma, filled with fear, filled with shame, doesn't actually feel too true to me. What I experience is that, yes, we can choose, because people say you can choose to opt out of your beliefs, and you can just choose to believe something else, and you can just choose to be bigger than that. And I don't actually agree with that. Yes, we can consciously in our minds, cognitively choose something, but we are more than our minds. So our whole being needs to be in alignment with that. Our whole being needs to agree with that. So if I choose a reality myself, if I choose that I am going to choose that I trust men, meanwhile, my body is still carrying the trauma of abuse and neglect and abandonment for so many generations, not just even just mine, I can't actually choose that. And I don't want to say like 100% I can't choose that, because I hear there are stories of people that randomly, sporadically enlighten and they stay like that for the rest of their lives, and they didn't do any trauma work or somatic work and it just happened. I haven't met those people though. So I don't want to say that's impossible. Power to you if that's your path. What I've experienced is that we are bounded by our flesh. So unless we heal the trauma that we carry in our bodies, we can't actually ascend our realities. We can't ascend our stories, because they're written in our bodies. They're a part of who we are, and what our systems tell ourselves we are safe to be, do, have, or not. So I had this deeper understanding of why trauma work and somatic work and embodiment work is so important. Because in that moment, for the first time, I felt that I could actually choose my story. For the first time, years and years and years, I'm talking about like more than a decade of deep committed work that I've been in, teaching it, studying it, being a part of it, receiving it, leading it, all of it. And for the first time, I saw, oh, now I can actually choose. Now I can actually change my story and create a new one, because I've emptied what was needed, right? It's like if you want to put more information in your iPhone and your app to storage, you're going to have to empty it before you can put new things on. So there's some really powerful things I noticed after this ceremony. First of all, for the last over 2 decades, I would say, I had experienced chronic lower back pain. Exactly around the time of when the molestation happened. Chronic back pain since. I went to chiropractors, osteopaths, physios, everything, you name it. Acupuncture, Pilates, recovery, yoga, everything. Did everything. And I had chronic back pain nonstop. Ever since that ceremony, I have not had back pain. Another thing I noticed, the morning after, we were packing our things. And my father, while I'm putting my sleeping bag inside the bag thing, asked me if I want support. Every single other time, my answer would have been no. Of course not. I can put a sleeping bag inside of a bag myself. It's a pretty simple thing to do. I've got it. I don't need help. Instead, the most authentic, natural, easy yes came out of my mouth. Yes, thank you. And I let him help me. Did I need that help? No. Could I have done that by myself? Yes. But I received him. He wanted to support me. And a little support doesn't hurt no one, right? So I received him. I was able to say yes. Throughout the days to follow and the months to follow, this was in October 2022. Now, recording this is April 2023, still to this date. My availability to receive the masculine, to receive support, to ask for what I desire from men and also be the space for them to say no if they choose to, is beyond what I ever thought possible. What I ever thought possible. And the fact that my lower back pain is gone is so mind-blowing to me. I knew that trauma work can do this. I knew that somatic work could do this. I heard all the stories about healing chronic diseases and chronic pain and so many different things through somatic work. I've seen it in some of my clients. I've heard of it in some other people, but I hadn't experienced it to this degree myself. Even though I had done somatic work, of course, I had done trauma work, of course. But what I feel really did it for me, apart from every single piece of work I've done before then that compounded, of course, and made that peak moment possible, I don't believe it's just that ceremony. Everything I did previously to that created the soil for this to actually be able to happen. But what I think made it for me was the time that I spent fully surrendered and fully in the process. How focused I was, how intentional I was. And of course, it was my time. I believe healing doesn't happen before it's our time. And I could have done the same ceremony 2 years before and not have that result. I could have done the same ceremony. I could go to the same ceremony this year and not have the same thing. So there's also that divine timing and divine orchestration for sure where at play. But what I've noticed is my availability to receive men has expanded so deeply. And I was already a pretty orgasmic person. That just took it to a whole other level. Amount of pleasure that I feel my body is available for has expanded. The amount of ease that I experience, where I'm not rehearsing life or fighting life. I can be here now and feel safe in the now moment a lot more. I feel a lot more availability for authentic expression, not just with people really close to me, but just with anybody. There is a lot more, a deeper sense of calmness whenever I face challenges, whether these are challenges in my relationship, whether these are challenges with any other area of my life. I feel a deep, grounded calmness that goes with it. And so I am so grateful that this happened. Also, I've literally cried over this so many times because for those of you that don't know, my father died unexpectedly out of the blue of a heart attack on the 10th of February. This is 2 months ago now. And I am so deeply grateful that I got to have this experience, that I got to receive him in a deeper way, that I got to receive his support in a bigger way, even when I didn't need it, that I got to have this experience with him before he passed, because I would be so much more sad if I didn't get to experience that with him. So I see this as an incredible blessing that life gifted me to be able to have this experience with him before he left. And he was such a freer man since that ceremony. He walked lighter on the earth. He worried a lot less. He was so available to life again. He started to paint again. We started back when I said in Barcelona, but I purposely left the painting unfinished so that he kept going to paint every week or every day. And so the gifts that have come from this journey of fully trusting that without knowing the outcome of each thing, without knowing the next step, I could just take the very next step and trust that everything else was going to be revealed to me on a need-to-know basis. The gifts of these just keep on giving. And Also, my father started to message me every week, several times a week. We would talk on the phone all of the time. And this is something that had never happened. My father did not message him. I would message him and he would message back, but he would not start a conversation before then. He, even for my birthday, my mother would call me and then he would jump on the phone. But he wouldn't message me and call me just randomly. It wasn't part of what he did, not because he didn't care, but just wasn't what we did. And all of a sudden, he would start to message me and go, hey, give me an update. How are things with you? How are things with Brad? How are things with work? What are you up to? Where are you going next? Hey, remember to take pictures when you dress yourself up for Day of the Dead and send me pictures. Or, hey, I've always wanted to be in Costa Rica and you're there now, so send me videos. Like, he was so interested and so involved. And I truly believe that part of it was because I allowed him to have a place in my life. Before then, I didn't realize that all of my pain and all of my hurt and all of the stories that I made up about him and I, when I experienced a feeling of being abandoned by him as a kid, that were nothing more than just misunderstandings. But when I experienced that, I made up stories that said, I can't trust that. That doesn't care about me. That doesn't choose me. That doesn't put me first. That doesn't care about knowing how things are going for me. So why would I tell him? Why would I make space for that, right? And this would show up in my relationship as well. Big time, like huge time. So the fact that my father started to message me so often and wanted to check in with me and send me pictures about our painting, and we became like best friends, absolute best friends, which made it so much harder when he left, because not only I lost my father, but I lost one of my favorite people on earth, like absolute favorite people on earth. But I got the gift of that. I got the gift of fully receiving him and feeling received by him. And I could have not done that if I wouldn't have chosen to fully dive deep in this journey, to learn to respect men, to learn to heal my inner waters so that I could receive men again for what they are and not for what I made them to be based on my previous experiences, my past experiences, my fears, my resentments, my frustrations. So I invite you to do the same. You don't need to go to Mexico and go to the middle of the desert and purge your guts out and do everything I did to get this. But you can find someone that can support you to do somatic work, embodiment work, trauma work, body-led work. The work I facilitate in my containers, online containers, with my private containers, my in-person VIP experiences, my in-person retreats, everything is body-led because of this. Because as I said before, we can try to transcend our stories, but we are bounded by our flesh. So if our bodies are filled with density from our traumas and our fears and everything that we've experienced in the past, we will not be able to transcend the stories that we want to get over. Because those stories are written in the body. They stay there until we clear them. So the invitation is for you to really let this land. Whatever it is that you're receiving from this, whatever it is that you can relate to, that resonates for you, let land the fact that it is only through working on rewriting the stories in your body that you can actually create the space to create a new story. There is no choice point until we create the space for choice. We cannot create the space for choice while we are slaves to our conditioning. And our conditioning will be there until we clear it. We can wish it away, we can make it wrong, we can make ourselves wrong, but it won't go anywhere until we clear it. So this is my invitation for you to, first of all, if this inspires you, to really trust that life is orchestrating everything in the most divine, amazing way possible. You just don't know what's happening after this step. It's on a need to know basis all of the time. And sometimes we think we know, we fool ourselves to think that we know, but we never know. So there's an invitation for you to trust life more fully, to trust in your path more fully, to trust that everything is orchestrating itself in the most amazing, divine way for you to get exactly what you need. Not maybe what you want, but exactly what you need. And that there will be gifts that come from that. All you need to say, all you need to do is be a yes. Say yes to life. Life will life regardless. You can rehearse it, you can try to strategize it, you can fight with it, or you can say yes to it. Receive it. The same way that you can receive the man in your life, the same way that you can receive your healing, you can receive yourself fully. It all starts with you saying yes. So I invite you, I encourage you, I cheer you on to say yes. Say yes to life. Say yes to the magic that's awaiting for you. Say yes to the healing that's available to you. And remember that only through saying yes to this body-led healing will you be able to say yes to all the stories and all the realities that you wish to call into your life. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that it landed for you in a valuable way. If you want more of this content, be sure to subscribe so you get notified when new episodes are released. And since you're already here, if you want to leave us a rating and a review, that would be so deeply appreciated. You can also find me on Instagram at Sigrid Tasies for more free, transformational, and inspirational content. And if you want to receive updates on all of the different things, offers, events, free resources that we have for you, then come and join my inner circle. Go to sigridtasies.com/inner circle and subscribe over there. I will leave all of the links in the show notes for you, and I will connect with you on the next episode. Lots of love.